House number 1. For $250,000, you get 8 bedrooms, 5 bathrooms, and 4,956 square feet of pure Victorian decay in Scandia, Kansas. This is the Herman home. Built in 1900, sitting on 11.2 acres of land that used to be a working farm and now looks like something out of a horror movie set. Look at that roof line. That's a mansard roof, the signature of the Second Empire style. The same architectural style people associate with haunted houses in half the movies you've seen. 3 dormer windows on each side stare out like eyes, and right now they're stripped down to bare wood, half finished, with tarps and exposed framing where the shingles used to be. Someone started restoring this place and then just stopped. Walk up to the front and you'll see the giant arched entryway, flanked by 2 stone pillars holding up a portico. It's grand. It's the kind of entrance a wealthy family would have built to show off in 1900. Now there's a lone ladder leaning against a wall, some scattered debris on the porch, and the wood siding has faded to a sickly mustard yellow. The house has been sitting empty long enough that the trees around it have grown wild and bare, framing it like something out of a Charles Addams drawing. Inside is where it gets worse. The wallpaper is original, or close to it, floral patterns from another century peeling and water stained in long vertical streaks down the walls. There's a full staircase, dark wood, ornately carved newel post at the bottom that climbs up into shadow. At the top of one flight, there's a second staircase heading down into what looks like a dumping ground of stacked boxes and debris. This home has 3 full levels plus a basement, and every single one of them looks like it hasn't seen a cleaning crew in decades. The listing says the basement is only partially finished, which is realtor language for don't go down there alone. The heating system runs on wall units, meaning most of this 4,956 square foot home has no central heat at all, which explains a lot about the condition of the walls. Now here's a fact that makes this listing extra unsettling. This house has been sitting on the market since November of 2022. That's not weeks, that's not months, that's years, unable to find a single buyer despite the price. The Zestimate currently sits at $236,900, close to the asking price, but the county tax assessment values it at only $211,000. Annual property taxes run $3,771 a year for a house nobody wants to touch. And it's not just the house. This property comes with 10 to 11 acres of buildings, trees, land, and wildlife, according to the listing itself. Multiple outbuildings sit scattered across the land, including a crumbling cinder block structure with boarded windows, a collapsing barn with a rusted metal roof, and a towering grain silo looming in the background like a watchtower. Half of these structures look structurally unsound. The listing doesn't specify what's inside them, and honestly, you probably don't want to know. Scandia, Kansas has a population under 400 people. This house was likely built by a prosperous farming family at the turn of the century, back when Second Empire mansions like this one were a status symbol on the prairie. Now it's a relic, stripped of its former life, sitting alone on the edge of a town that's shrinking every year. For $250,000, you're not just buying a house. You're buying 3 stories of peeling wallpaper, a half-stripped mansard roof, an unfinished basement, a stalled restoration project, and 11 acres of decaying outbuildings that haven't sold in over 2 years. If you're brave enough to spend a night alone on that staircase, this one might just be worth the price. House number 2. For $205,000 to $285,000, depending on which listing you find, you can own an actual replica castle complex on Prince Edward Island. This is Woodley Replicas, sitting on 2.79 acres just minutes from Kensington, and yes, you read that right. Before you're allowed to walk the property, you have to sign a waiver. Look at these aerial shots. This isn't one building, it's an entire fortified compound of stone towers, crenellated walls, and turrets sprawled across a wooded lot surrounded by a literal moat. The main structure is a 1:3 scale replica of the Tower of London, built from fieldstone and river rock, with square battlements and arrow-slit windows. Right beside it stands a replica of Dunvegan Castle, completed in 1962. This whole property was once one of Pay's most visited tourist attractions, and now it's just sitting here abandoned in the woods, waiting for someone brave enough to take it on. The listing itself calls this one of Pay's most recognized tourist sites in days gone by. Past tense. That phrase alone should tell you something. This place used to draw crowds. Now the grounds are being reclaimed by trees. A massive dead oak has grown up right through the center courtyard, and the once manicured lawns have gone wild. In the drone shots, you can see tarps, scattered debris, and what looks like abandoned vehicles parked near the towers, like someone walked away mid-project and never came back. Here's where the facts get genuinely bizarre. According to the description, the property doesn't just include the two main castles. There's also a 30-foot replica of Nelson's Column, the same monument that stands in London's Trafalgar Square. Except here, it's rising out of the Canadian woods for no reason anyone can fully explain. There's also a miniature statue of Robert Burns, the Scottish poet, standing watch over a property that has nothing to do with Scotland except for the fact that someone decided to build a castle here in the 1960s and just kept going. The listing admits the home needs work. New wiring has been installed along with new plumbing and a new well, but the structure itself has 0 bedrooms and 0 bathrooms on record, because this was never actually built as a residence. There's no heating, no cooling, no sewer connection. It's officially zoned as rural, and the county tax assessment values the entire castle complex at just C$37,800, with annual property taxes of only C$657. For context, that's less than what most people pay for a single bathroom renovation. And here you're getting a fortified stone tower with a moat. The listing has been sitting on the market for over 2 weeks with 537 views and 49 saves, which means plenty of people are looking. But so far, nobody's pulled the trigger. That waiver requirement isn't just a legal formality either. If you look closely at the stonework in these photos, cracks are visible along several of the tower walls, and sections of the crenellations look structurally unstable. Walking these grounds unsupervised is enough of a risk that the seller needs it in writing before you set foot on the property. The whole compound overlooks the Long River, and the listing says there's still room to build an actual home on the land, meaning the castle itself would just become your backyard structure. A stone fortress with a moat sitting empty in the Canadian woods since the 1960s, slowly crumbling while forests grow up around its towers. If you've ever wanted to live somewhere that looks like it belongs in a gothic horror film, this abandoned kingdom on Prince Edward Island might be the closest you'll ever get. House number 3. For $95,000, you can own a piece of oil money history in Independence, Kansas. This is the Bristol-McBride Mansion. A Romanesque brick beast with a corner tower straight out of a Gothic novel, sitting on 0.71 acres and totaling 7,111 square feet across 5 bedrooms. And here's the kicker: 0 bathrooms. If you buy this house, you are, quite literally, out of luck when nature calls. Look at that tower. That circular brick turret dominating the corner of the house with its own crown of decorative brickwork is not original to the home. This mansion started out in 1874 as a plain, boxy 2-story brick house built for a man named Norris Bennett Bristol. It wasn't until 1902, when an oil millionaire named Albert P. McBride bought the place, that it got the full Romanesque makeover. The tower, the ornate stonework, the whole luxurious transformation you see today. So what you're really looking at is oil boom wealth stacked on top of a Victorian-era shell. Now look at the state of it. The white wood siding on the second floor is peeling and rotting in long strips, exposing bare gray wood underneath. The overhanging roofline sags. Vines are creeping up the brick foundation and wrapping around the porch columns. There's a stone retaining wall out front with an iron gate, the kind of ominous entry point that looks like it belongs in a horror film establishing shot. This home has clearly been fighting a losing battle against time for decades. Step inside, and the decay only gets more dramatic. One room has been stripped down to bare studs and exposed rafters, insulation hanging loose from the ceiling, floorboards scuffed and stained, with an old green tiled fireplace standing alone in the middle of the wreckage like the last surviving piece of the original house. Then there's the staircase. The wallpaper here is original hand-painted floral work, climbing vines and pink hydrangea blooms, peeling in giant curling sheets off the walls and ceiling. It's beautiful and deeply unsettling at the same time, like walking through a decayed memory of what this house used to be. Here's a fact that makes this listing genuinely wild. According to the listing itself, this mansion was converted into apartments back in 1949 to house workers from the nearby Independence Army Airfield during World War II. That means for years, this once single-family oil baron mansion was chopped up and packed with wartime factory workers and their families, all crammed into a house built for one prosperous household. You can still see traces of that history in the layout today. By the late 1990s, the house had been fully abandoned. Restoration attempts have technically been underway since 1999, over 25 years now, and yet here it sits, still gutted, still half-finished, still without a single bathroom to its name. The listing says photos of the interior are coming soon, which after 25 years of restoration work feels like an understatement. The numbers tell their own story. The Zestimate sits at $92,200, barely above the assessed tax value of $46,810, meaning this house is worth a fraction of what it would cost to actually finish restoring it. Property taxes and market data for a home this size, this old, and this incomplete simply don't move. 65 other homes are currently listed for sale in the area, and this one, despite the jaw-dropping architecture and the jaw-dropping price tag, still sits waiting. For $95,000, you get a Romanesque brick mansion with a genuine oil millionaire pedigree, a haunting corner tower, hand-painted Victorian wallpaper, exposed World War II-era apartment bones, and not a single toilet in the entire 7,111 square feet. 25 years of restoration attempts, and this house still isn't done. Some houses just refuse to let go of their past. House number 4. For $475,000, this Second Empire mansion in Marysville, Kansas, doesn't need to loom over you to feel unsettling. It's got 4,646 total square feet, 6 bedrooms, and only 2 bathrooms sitting on 5 acres along a stretch of Kansas highway with almost nothing else around. And this one comes with real credentials. It's listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Look at the roofline. That's a mansard roof again, black slate tiles with a rounded bay tower rising 2 stories on the corner, capped with elaborate cream-colored cornices and bracketed eaves. The stone exterior is cut sandstone block, warm honey-colored limestone that was clearly expensive to source and lay in 1872. Bare trees surround the house on every side, and there's not another home in sight in these photos. Just fields and sky stretching out in every direction. That isolation is exactly what the listing leans into, and honestly, it earns it. Step inside and the contrast is jarring. One room is fully preserved, original toil wallpaper in a soft cream and gold pattern covering every wall, an antique crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling, and a genuine antique pump organ sitting in the corner by the window. The kind you'd expect to hear playing itself in a horror movie at 3am. The hardwood floors are original, the window trim is original, stained a deep honey oak that's clearly over 150 years old. This room looks frozen in 1872, and that's exactly what makes it eerie. Someone has preserved this house almost too well. Now here's where the numbers get genuinely strange. This home was first listed for sale on December 16th, 2023, at the full $475,000 asking price. By April 17th, 2024, the price had already dropped nearly 17% down to $395,000. Then, by August 2nd, 2024, the listing was pulled entirely, removed from the market altogether. A historic mansion on the National Register, sitting on nearly 15 acres, couldn't find a buyer even after a steep price cut, and the sellers simply gave up and walked away from the sale. The current Zestimate sits at $343,800, nearly $131,000 below the original asking price, while the county still assesses the home's tax value at $319,450. That's a massive gap between what the county says it's worth on paper and what the market has actually been willing to pay for it. Despite sitting in a buyer's market with a market index of just 41 out of 100, meaning conditions favor buyers heavily, this house still couldn't close a deal. The home only has 2 bathrooms across 6 bedrooms, which for a mansion this size built in the Gilded Age tells you a lot about how houses like this were actually lived in. Heating runs through wall units only, no central system, and the basement is only partially finished. Common problems for a home built over 150 years ago that's clearly never had a full modern renovation. What's especially eerie is how untouched this place feels compared to most abandoned mansions. There's no obvious decay, no peeling paint hanging off the walls, no crumbling plaster. The wallpaper is intact. The organ still sits ready to be played. It's the kind of preserved in time quality that feels less like abandonment and more like someone simply stopped living here one day and never came back, leaving everything exactly as it was. Sitting alone on a desolate stretch of Highway 77, with fields on every side and not a neighbor for miles, this National Register mansion has already failed to sell twice, dropped nearly $80, dough zero in asking price, and vanished from the market entirely. For $475,000, or whatever the next asking price ends up being, you're not just buying a house. You're buying a perfectly preserved slice of 1872 that nobody so far has been brave enough to actually move into. House number 5. For $4,750,000, you get Elmwood Farm, a 43-room Elizabethan manor perched on the crest of Quaker Hill in Pawling, New York. 8 bedrooms officially on record, 13 bathrooms, 15,000 square feet sitting on 25.5 acres at the end of a long, gated, winding drive. Built in 1860, this house has spent over 165 years accumulating history, and looking at it, you can tell. Look at that silhouette. Dramatic rooflines, carved timber fascia, and Gothic-inspired spires jut up against the sky, with a tall red brick chimney tower rising above the Tudor-style black and white timber framing. This isn't your typical wood frame farmhouse. It's an Elizabethan-style manor, the kind of architecture more common in the English countryside than in the Hudson Valley, complete with steep gables, leaded glass windows, and stone turret work on one wing that looks like it belongs on a castle, not a private residence. Step around back, and there's a life-sized weathered bronze statue standing in the middle of the manicured lawn, positioned like it's watching the house. The listing doesn't explain who or what it represents. It's just there, staring at the arched glass sunroom windows, a strange detail in an otherwise pristine formal garden. Inside, the wood paneling takes over completely. A grand oak staircase curves upward under an open beamed ceiling, its newel posts hand-carved with whimsical animal figures, 30 of them throughout the house according to the listing. Portraits and statues line the entry hall, including what looks like a full suit of samurai armor standing guard near the base of the stairs. 10 fireplaces are scattered throughout the home, several of them labeled specifically for bedrooms, meaning multiple rooms in this house were designed so you could fall asleep next to an open flame. Here's a detail that stands out. According to the original listing description, this house includes a circus room and a separate wing on the second floor, featuring hand-painted storybook murals, meaning somewhere inside this 15,000 square foot manor there are walls covered floor to ceiling in painted circus and fairy tale imagery from another era. Combine that with the taxidermy adjacent samurai statue, the animal carved staircase, and the mysterious bronze figure on the lawn, and you've got a house that reads less like an estate listing and more like the set of a psychological horror film. Beyond the main house, the property functions as an entire self-sufficient compound. 2 separate caretaker homes, a carriage house with groom's quarters, a yoga studio, a greenhouse, and according to the original listing, a 12,000 square foot stable, since this property is zoned to allow horses. The listing notes the basement is entirely unfinished, which on a house this old and this large leaves plenty of unexplored square footage beneath your feet. The financials are just as extreme as the architecture. Annual property taxes run $56,015 on a tax-assessed value of $759,000, a fraction of the $4.75 million asking price. Heating runs on oil, cooling is only wall and window units, meaning a home this size has no central air conditioning at all. The listing has been active for 95 days, racking up 5,641 views and 403 saves. Yet after over 89 cumulative days on market, it's still sitting unsold. Quaker Hill itself has a reputation as a historically reclusive enclave, quietly home to artists, writers, and diplomats seeking privacy for over a century. Elmwood Farm stands as one of its most recognizable landmarks, a manor built in 1860 that has watched the surrounding hills change for over a century and a half. For $4, $75 million, you're not just buying 15,000 square feet and 25 acres. You're buying a circus room, storybook murals, 10 working fireplaces, and a bronze statue on the lawn that never blinks. House number 6. For $229,900, you can own an entire converted schoolhouse in Fort Hunter, New York, technically listed under Amsterdam. This place is 4,262 square feet, 3 bedrooms, 1 full bathroom, built in 1890, and it's surrounded on all 4 sides by New York State parkland, meaning your closest neighbors are trees, hiking trails, and whatever wildlife wanders through. Look at the belfry. That octagonal wooden tower crowning the roofline, complete with a peaked spire and arched windows, is straight out of a New England ghost story. This was originally an 1880s schoolhouse, 4 full classrooms, and you can still see the bones of that layout in the current structure. The white wood siding is peeling in long vertical strips across the entire facade, curling and cracking from over a century of exposure. The double front doors sit beneath an arched entryway, flanked by tall windows on either side, and there's an American flag still hanging limp near the entrance, one of the only signs anyone's actually living here. Here's where it gets genuinely wild. The listing itself states this building has 11-foot high ceilings in each of the 4 original classrooms, plus 4 separate 8x8 cloakrooms. The small rooms where 1880s schoolchildren would have hung their coats before class. A large center hall entrance leads to a big staircase, and the original interior trims, moldings, wood floors, and wainscoting are still intact throughout most of the classrooms. This is a building that has survived over 140 years while functioning as an actual public school, not a private residence, which means generations of children walked these same halls long before anyone ever lived here. Now look at that archival photograph. This is the same schoolhouse, but decades earlier, sitting empty on a rural road corner sometime in the 1950s, back when it was documented as part of the Schoharie Crossing State Historic Site. The photo shows the building looking almost identical. Same tower, same roofline, standing alone next to a winding country road with a few parked cars and telephone poles nearby. This building has been standing on this exact plot of land for well over a century, without much changing around it, which is exactly the kind of detail that makes an old structure feel less like a home and more like something waiting. The current owners are apparently living inside parts of the schoolhouse while renovations remain incomplete, using an open concept kitchen and living space, 1 bathroom, 1 bedroom, and a utility room as their livable areas. Meanwhile, the rest of the building, those 4 massive classrooms with 11-foot ceilings, sits in some undefined state of as-is repair. The listing openly admits varying degrees of work are still needed throughout. The financial history on this property is almost as strange as the building itself. Back in 1999, this place sold for just $65,000. Then in 2017, it sold again for a shocking $6,000, practically given away. A year later in 2018, it flipped for $23,000, then jumped straight to $199,900 in 2018 as well, an almost 800% increase within the same year. By 2021, it was briefly listed at $229,900, dropped to $215,000, then $199,900, and finally sold in April of 2022 for that same $199,900 price. Today, the Zestimate sits at $234,300, and annual property taxes run just $2,291, remarkably low for over 4,000 square feet of livable and classroom space. Heating is a patchwork system of baseboard, a wood stove, propane, solar, and a pellet stove, meaning there's no single central heat source keeping this entire schoolhouse warm in the winter. The basement remains fully unfinished. Cooling is handled by wall units only. The listing pitches this as a potential bed and breakfast, a homeschool or charter school building, a dance studio, an office space, or a wedding venue. But surrounded by state parkland on every side, standing alone since at least the 1880s, with 4 echoing classrooms still waiting to be filled, this old schoolhouse feels less like a business opportunity and more like a building that's still listening for the sound of children in the halls. House number 7. For $175,000 to $259,900, depending on which listing you catch, this brick duplex in Cincinnati's Mohawk Place Historic District is exactly the kind of place that looks abandoned even when someone technically owns it. 6 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, 3,294 square feet, built in 1878, and it's currently boarded up tight against the street. Look at the exterior. Nearly every window on the front facade has been sealed off with plywood, painted the same brick red as the walls so it blends in rather than stands out, which somehow makes it more unsettling, not less. The stone cornice work above the roofline is elaborate, ornate dental molding running the full width of the building, a remnant of just how much money went into constructing this place back in 1878. Now it sits fenced off behind a rusted cast iron gate, elevated on a stone retaining wall staring down at the street below. Step inside, and it's a full gut job. One room has been stripped completely down to the studs, exposed ceiling joists overhead, walls scraped down to raw plaster and lath in patches of pink, green, and cream where old paint layers are peeling away in sheets. A door stands propped open into a pitch-black hallway beyond, boarded up windows blocking out any natural light. The listing itself admits this property is being sold entirely as is where is, with the seller making 0 repairs and 0 warranties, meaning whatever you see is exactly what you get, structural surprises included. Then there's the staircase, curling down into the basement level with ornately turned wooden balusters and a worn iron handrail, leading toward a heavy dark wooden door at the bottom that looks like it hasn't been opened in years. The listing notes this building still has its original staircase, original trim, and original built-ins intact. Genuine 1870s craftsmanship hiding underneath over a century of decay. Here's a fact that makes this listing particularly interesting. According to the listing description, this property sits wedged directly between the University of Cincinnati's campus and the Over-the-Rhine Entertainment District, one of the most rapidly gentrifying areas in the city. The listing openly pitches converting the duplex into 2 separate luxury condos, or living in one unit while renting out the other, and notes the lot even extends back to the next street over, Clotter, with potential to parcel off land for 2 additional structures entirely. The numbers here are strange too. The county tax assessment values the property at just $26,250, a fraction of both the $175,000 listing price and the current Zestimate of $329,100. Annual property taxes run $6,286 a year, more than 20% of the assessed value, an unusually high tax burden for a building in this condition. The property has 2 fireplaces, but the listing specifically notes both are inoperable, purely decorative reminders of function this house lost long ago. There's no heating system and no cooling system listed at all, meaning whoever owns this right now is enduring Cincinnati winters and summers with absolutely nothing running. The market around this listing is aggressive too, sitting at an 18 out of 100 market index, officially classified as a strong buyer's market, meaning conditions are heavily tilted in favor of whoever's willing to take this project on. Comparable renovated properties just blocks away have sold for anywhere between $229,000 and $420,000. Proof that Mohawk Place is transforming fast even while this particular building sits gutted and boarded. A 147-year-old duplex, stripped to its studs, boarded up against the street, sitting on a hillside lot with room to build 2 more structures. In a historic district getting swallowed by gentrification block by block. For $175,000, you're not buying a finished house. You're buying the bones of one, original staircase, inoperable fireplaces, and all, and betting on whether the neighborhood catches up before the building falls down first. House number 8. For anywhere between $1.5 and $4.9 million, depending on which listing you catch, you can own the Henderson Castle, an 11,900 square foot Queen Anne mansion sitting on 2 acres atop West Main Hill in Kalamazoo, Michigan, 14 bedrooms, 17 bathrooms, built in 1895, and unlike most houses on this list, this one comes with documented reports of actual paranormal activity. Look at that roofline. Steep, multi-gabled, with a full turret rising off the corner topped in wrought iron cresting, and no fewer than 5 chimneys jutting up from the red brick and Lake Superior sandstone exterior. This house was built for Frank Henderson, one of early Kalamazoo's most successful businessmen, and back in 1890, the construction alone cost $72,000, an absolutely staggering sum for the era. That budget bought 7 original bathrooms, including one with a 13-head shower, a working elevator, and a 3rd-floor ballroom. Step through the front door and you're standing in a genuine antique elevator, an old cage-style lift with exposed wiring and a manual folding gate, original to the house and apparently still in service. Down the hall, oil portraits of long-dead women in Victorian dress stare out from gilded frames above antique pump organs and marble-topped pedestals, the kind of decor that looks like it was staged specifically for a ghost story. Deeper into the house, a full suit of medieval armor stands guard beside a coffered gold ceiling and a crystal chandelier, next to a stained glass entryway framed in dark carved mahogany. Here's where the facts get genuinely unsettling. According to the person who posted this listing, there are legitimate reports that the spirits of the home's original owners still linger on the property, and that a piano in the house has been heard playing on its own at night with no one at the keys. Whether or not you believe in that kind of thing, the current owners have leaned all the way in. The property actively hosts murder mystery dinners and haunted history tours as part of its regular event calendar. And directly across the street from the castle sits an actual cemetery, adding one more layer to the whole picture that this house has never quite let its history rest. The interior wood alone reads like a hardwood auction catalog: mahogany, bird's eye maple, quartered oak, birch, and American sycamore, all installed by craftsmen at the peak of Gilded Age excess. The home has been fully modernized as a functioning boutique inn since being renovated under new ownership in 2011, now run by a master French chef. And it currently holds a ranking among the top historic inns in Michigan, according to AA. Modern additions include heated marble floors, a sauna, a steam room, a wine cave, an in-ground spa pool, and a rooftop lounge with a jacuzzi that was added years after the original 1890s construction, meaning you get 130 years of Victorian ghost story architecture paired with 21st century luxury amenities. There's also a separate 864 square foot cottage house on the property with 2 full bedrooms and 2 full bathrooms, ideal for a caretaker or additional guests. Financially, this property is a fully operating business, not just a private residence. The listing specifically states the castle is being sold turnkey and ready to generate revenue from day one, actively hosting weddings, corporate retreats, wine tastings, and cooking classes. The county currently assesses the property at $1,513,200, with annual property taxes running $41,137. The Zestimate sits at $1,535,200, though depending on the specific listing and the business valuation attached to it, asking prices for this property have been reported as high as $4.9 million. 14 bedrooms, an original working elevator, a self-playing piano, and a cemetery watching from across the street. The Henderson Castle isn't just one of the most expensive houses on this list, it might be the only one with an actual reputation for being haunted, backed by over 130 years of Kalamazoo history and a business model built entirely around embracing it.